Well, although, boy, I mean, I don't know how much you followed the roasting that Atlassian got for acquiring the browser company. I mean, for a
I'm sure there's
solid two
plenty.
weeks. Oh, there was. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn too much apparently, but there was plenty of roasting, and I didn't. I think that was a lot of short-sighted people.
Data, you have freedom, flexibility. There's no approvals, no corporate bureaucracy. Like you're free. That's why a lot of these products grow so quick because they innovate so quickly.
They're really, 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 really going after enterprise. And you know what the biggest sign was? It sponsored an F1 team.
Oh, interesting. Thank you, Michael, for being on our podcast. You were working at Appfire as the manager of growth analytics, which I think is super cool. For anybody who doesn't know, Appfire is the biggest provider of applications in the Jira Atlassian ecosystem. So a lot of questions that I definitely have around that, but thank you, Michael, for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh. It was great meeting you and the team at the Atlassian Builder Summit. It was a lot of fun, that event. And by the way, congratulations on you just launched a school. I just read on LinkedIn this
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah, that was something we've been working on for the past few weeks, kind of after the ABS event. But we'll see how things go. Just trying to, have a place for like courses, community. So yeah, that did just launch. Super exciting. We'll see how it goes. But ABS was awesome as well. I think it was a one of a kind event so far. Hopefully, we'll see more like that. Definitely something that I think a lot of people enjoyed while they were there. That kind of saw the value in it as well. Now I'm curious from your perspective as someone who's like worked with Appfire and all that, what are your thoughts on the other application providers, solutions partners, and like solutions out there in general, and kind of the landscape of, I guess let's talk about apps first.
Sure. Well, as everyone knows, it's changing. I was
Mhm.
watching some of your past podcasts, the one with it was with Chris Cook, I think it was.
Mhm. Yeah.
He used the term Appmageddon. And I'm more about appmorphosis. If I'm going to try to make up a new term that uses the word app, it's changing, and Atlassian's been pretty clear about that for a while, actually, that it's going to change. And so,
Mhm.
as has been said, the days of seeing something that Jira doesn't do, a narrow, small use case that Jira doesn't do, and building a product in your bedroom and putting it out there and making a nice little lifestyle career out of that, it doesn't look like that's going to last much longer. The
So
trend
those
is
days are
more,
over.
they are pretty much. And Actually, I don't know, do you read Brian Balfour? You know who Brian Balfour is?
Sounds super familiar.
Probably. Well, he's the founder of Reforge. He was one of the original head of growth at HubSpot, and he's become
Okay.
a real authority in product-led growth. And I'm a big fan of the Reforge educational platform that he founded. Anyways, he had an article this past summer called "The Coming Distribution Shift," and he basically laid out how historically you've seen um, new distribution channels for software, whether it's the App Store for iOS, whether it's Salesforce App Exchange, whether it's the Atlassian Marketplace, whether it's LinkedIn, if you can think of it as a distribution channel. He said he shows how the long-term pattern is they open them up and they're very, very generous and they want everybody to come in and they make it really easy to produce value and frankly to make money in those
Mhm.
distribution channels. But eventually, it's a natural evolution that as the company that owns the distribution channel, so in this case Atlassian with the Atlassian Marketplace, eventually it's going to shift because eventually they're going to look for more expansion and growth opportunities. And eventually they're going to basically take the best ideas that have been developed from across this distribution channel, all these participants, and they're going to say, thank you very
Mhm.
much. That's a great idea. I think we'll incorporate that in the product. Facebook did that. This is another example he gives. Facebook did that when they made a big deal at F8 about offering to have apps, and they gave very generous promotion arrangement, very generous revenue sharing. And this is where you saw like Zynga just
Mhm.
blow up with all their games that were hosted on Facebook. People were playing Farmville on Facebook and all that. And there was a ton of money being made. And then Facebook said, this is awesome. We should do this ourselves. And they did. And overnight, distribution channel went away. And companies like Zynga went, what happened? Their
Mhm.
daily and monthly active users just fell through the floor. So it's natural. This is what happens in distribution channels. And to continue kind of the paraphrase Brian's work on this, OpenAI is the next big one. They
Mhm.
just announced apps, right? And they've had some exclusive partners, and they've documented an SDK, and they're going to make it more available in January. And everyone's going to rush in, and everyone's going to have a lot of fun, and everyone's going to make good money. And then OpenAI eventually say, this is awesome. You've got some great ideas there. We think we'll make those into our product. It's not evil. It's not bad. It is the natural
It's just
evolution.
business.
It's
Capitalism.
business. Yeah. And one of Brian's points is this is natural. It's the way it happens in distribution
Yeah.
channels. So go in with your eyes wide open. Understand
Mhm.
that this is the life cycle of a distribution channel, and be ready to establish your
Mm.
relationship with your customers, strong relationship with your customers that can withstand when that distribution channel changes
Yeah.
or goes away, and have a very defensible product. And so, it's probably a little bit more product growthy than really narrow Jira talk here. But you
No, I
know,
think I think that was the best answer I've ever had on this podcast about what's happening to apps. Is
thanks.
so grounded and like true, but at the same time, like you're not you're facing reality, right? It's what's happening, and you can recognize that, which I actually agree with 100%. There were like two things that I think are kind of major, which is the channels, the distribution channels, right? Before, when you just start a platform, you think of iPhone when they just released the App Store. If you were an app on the App Store, you're getting downloads because you're the first one there, right?
It could be a
There's no
flashlight app,
marketing.
and you are making bank,
Yeah,
right?
there's no marketing. There's nothing. You're just there. You get customers. You're done.
Yeah.
When that market becomes saturated, it's all about marketing. It's all about advertisement. You can't just rely on like the natural traffic of like the app store or the app solution. It's the same thing with Atlassian now. A few years ago, maybe you still had some chance of getting recognized as an app. But now, if you're uploading an app, and I've done this, and I've seen a lot of other people do this, and if you're not promoting it, if you don't have enough,
Mm-hmm.
but Amazon does the same thing with products. If you look at Amazon Basics,
Yep.
so they literally took free information from like the people that are selling on their store, and they're like, what sells the best? Let's knock them off and put up our alternative and make some money. So like they're collecting data on the people that make money on their platform, and they make money because of it, and then they make even more money once they collect that data. Same thing with Atlassian, right? They find that gap. They're like, oh, this product is really popular, let's just knock it off, and then they turn it into their own product, or they purchase or acquire the app. But yeah, that's just how life works. That's just how business is. um, I think you just have to, kind of as you mentioned, you have to be a real differentiator. You have to have like a very strong use case for your solution, because there's only so much Atlassian could do to like mimic your functionality, right? And even being in an organization that big, they could only move so fast. Like if you're developing on your own, like you can do whatever you want. You have freedom, flexibility. There's no approvals, no corporate bureaucracy. Like you're free. That's why a lot of these products grow so quick, because they innovate so quickly. And I think those are the big things that you'd have to do to stand out. But you're 100% correct, and I love that answer, because it's just so true, and it's not like sugarcoating anything. It's just the way things are right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not comfortable, but here's the good news though. Is the direction that the marketplace is going is more towards solution focused, and that is also
Yeah.
what Atlassian, to their credit, they've been very clear and very honest about this. Right. The comparison I've been making is like the Salesforce App Exchange. you're not seeing little widgets and little minor feature plugins in the App Exchange. You are seeing full-blown solutions that address vertical markets or very specific business processes or support really rich integration with other
Mm-hmm.
products, typically placed there by the owner of the primary product that they want to integrate with Salesforce. So it's a shift there. And of course, the target also with the App Exchange is, well, Salesforce customers, which tend to be small, medium business and enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you can kind of apply that to the app, Josh, that you have on the marketplace, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's clearly meant as, and we talked about this when we're at the booth in Builder Summit. It's meant to be a part of the solutions that you deliver, right?
Yeah.
You can get a
We don't market it
standalone.
as an app.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It is you. It's really it's on the App Store marketplace because it gives it some credibility, and you don't have to worry about shopping cart. You don't have to worry about
Yeah.
invoicing. It's very very easy, right, to include it um, on a purchase order. But your intent with it is we offer solutions, and this app facilitates the solutions we offer. That's the future of the
I
marketplace
agree.
at varying levels of scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yours is kind of very much modeled to the kind of solutions that that you deliver. There's going to be other ones. For example, there's one I know of. I'm forgetting the solution partner who backs it up at the moment, but it is oriented towards the energy industry that has very specific business processes around equipment maintenance schedules. And now that's
Mm-hmm.
a workflow that's heavy on documentation. So it's beautiful for Jira and beautiful for Confluence. But Jira and Confluence don't really do that out of the box. But if you have a solution that takes all the real specific nuances of the
Mm-hmm.
processes, the terminology, regulatory constraints, and so forth for that industry, and offer that is you install this into Jira and Confluence along with our services, you will have a fantastic workflow management process for equipment maintenance for the energy industry. That's what
Yeah.
Atlassian's looking for. The problem is you're generally not going to do that out of your bedroom, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be
You have to
part
have
of
a
the
lot of
solution partner.
experience.
You have to have a
Yeah.
lot of experience. You've got to have presence. You got a presence in that industry. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all part of the broader Atlassian shift to the enterprise.
Yeah, I agree. And if you are in like those business verticals, you're very unlikely to get knocked off because it's not a wide enough use case for Atlassian to like implement. I mean, sometimes they do, but it's far more rare and unlikely that they do something like that
Yeah,
versus a
yeah.
reporting tool, for example.
Atlassian would much rather, I believe, and you can kind of get this from what they say, would much rather you, enterprise solution provider, deploy this specific solution, and then
Mhm.
Atlassian working with you expands usage and expands adoption and use cases within because you got that foot that foot in the door, or Jira
Mhm.
and Confluence are already in that company. Maybe their developers are using it, and your solution has enabled Atlassian to expand their footprint in the organization. Either way, Atlassian wins, and it
Yeah,
serves
very
their
true.
enterprise expansion goals.
Yeah. I don't think I've agreed with anyone on this podcast as I much have with you so far. Even putting on like my business hat, if I'm looking at the perspective of launching an app, coming at the like from a perspective of services and then providing a solution, having a one and done project, and then adding an app on top of that, which could be very cheap, doesn't really matter, but you increase your LTV of the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and then that vastly increases your enterprise value as an organization. So it's not like you want to make a ton of money on maybe the app solution, which you can make some. It's more so around like you have that solution that you provide, and then you increase retention with an app that's an extra couple of years in most cases, and then your enterprise value shoots through the roof because of it. So 100%, I think solutions partners, if they're not doing this now, they probably will look at this a lot more. And the apps that currently exist that are more gimmicky, I guess, in a way, will probably slowly start to die because of the functionality in Jira natively.
Yeah. Well, between the native functionality and the fact that Forge, um, really, when you get down to it, is meant to democratize customization
Mm,
of
that's great.
of the Atlassian platform. That's really
Especially with
its
Rovo and like the vibe coding stuff they showed off. That was insane.
exactly. And Salesforce announced the same thing. They now have vibe
Hmm.
coding built into the Salesforce platform, and it's the same idea: is they want to enable, whether it's their solution partners, a fast path to implementing a custom solution, or their enterprise customers who have the staff to do it. They want to enable
Hmm.
them to do that customization work as well. I did want to come back to your point about, just let's wrap up with, like in your case, having your own app, or a solution provider having their own app.
Hmm.
Another thing it provides is a lever for expansion. So it's one thing I've noticed in conversations with a lot of solution partners in the Atlassian channel is there's not a strong account management play. What I mean by that is when you talk to them about maintaining a long-term relationship with the customer, looking for further opportunities to provide services, there doesn't seem to be a lot of that habit, at least to the ones I've talked to some pretty big ones built in there. The tendency tends to be, well, Atlassian hands me a lead and I service the lead. But
Hmm.
the key is looking for further opportunities. And the point I was getting to is if you have an app installed, that's kind of like a natural lever, right? Because the app gets updates, the
Hmm.
app gets renewals. Um,
You also
even if
get
it,
emails of the users, which is pretty great.
right. So the smart solution providers leverage that as the opportunity for more opportunities to have conversations with their customer, for more
Hmm.
opportunities for to deliver more services.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. The account management side of things is tough as a solution provider. And it depends on the client that you're servicing. Some clients are like, "Hey, we want a long-term partnership. We don't want to touch Jira whatsoever." And those are fantastic. We love those.
Yep.
But then there's also like, teach us everything you know, make us self-sustainable. We want a one and done project, and those are tough to retain, right? Because they come in with this mindset of they want to be self-sufficient, and it very unlikely that you'll change their mindset, especially when they're not like geared towards allowing that to even happen in general. So your only real alternative is entirely other projects, which don't always work out, or sometimes they do, but again, they're still limited, or an app. That's really your only option at that point.
Yeah, the
And
best you have is warm contacts. You have warm leads.
mhm.
You can maintain the relationship. You're absolutely right. But yeah, the app at least gives you that lever.
Mhm.
More power, like you said, more powerful or less powerful depending upon the situation.
Yeah, very true. You mentioned that Atlassian's pivot to enterprise. I'm curious what your thoughts are around that, and if you think it's like a good business decision, and if it's a good decision for the customers, I guess, because they have a lot of mid-market customers. Is this going to turn out bad for those mid-market individuals at some point?
I don't think it'll turn out bad, because they will get the benefit of the scale, the increased investment that Atlassian will make for going after the enterprise. Now, I think that's actually even more of an opportunity for partners to establish strong relationships, because it remains to be seen how much focus Atlassian's own sales force will have on mid market versus the enterprise. I mean,
Hmm.
salespeople are coin operated, right? So let's see how they're incentivized to engage not only at the enterprise but at the SMB. So I think, just like Salesforce is does a decent job at addressing both the medium market and the enterprise. But then again, you've got HubSpot, and gosh, I don't have enough fingers to count how many real competitive CRMs that are out there that are targeting SMB, right?
Just those two. Yeah, I mean, there's like a few others, but they're very niche.
Yeah. And so even if, let's say, Atlassian doesn't do such a good job with the small, medium sized market for Jira, smart people are going to recognize the opportunity. Our competitors are going to recognize that opportunity. So you're going to actually, I would imagine, see more choice and more attention. I mean, if you're at any coffee shop in San Francisco, no one talks about how much they love Jira. They're all about linear, mostly. A few
Yeah.
ClickUp people, maybe an Asana person there, maybe a couple Monday people, but linear is what the cool kids use, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing linear now steadily increasing their enterprise-ish features, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it happens. So it remains to be seen. Will linear follow that same path? You know, the pressure to expand, right? The pressure to increase the ACV of their customers. Will they follow that path? Probably, if history teaches us anything, and that means
Mm-hmm.
more will come in to address those who go, linear used to be cool, but now it sucks because they're going after the enterprise, which is the
Yeah.
same thing that some people say about Jira, right?
It
Now, I've
used to be
always
the
been,
case with Jira.
well, right. But I mean, I've kind of always said that, you know, don't hate the platform, hate the admin. Um,
True.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's very true. Very
right?
true.
Jira configured and managed well is awesome,
Yeah.
but you know, just like
What? Yeah.
led Salesforce admin teams, and
Mm.
Salesforce configured well can be pretty great. Not configured well, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, very true. If you're like me, you've probably deleted a Jira work item by accident, and then you realize that there's no way to get it back. Happens to the best of us, and that's why I want to share one quick tip. Always have a backup. Trust me, I've seen too many teams learn this the hard way. Our partner, GitProtect.io, makes this simple. It's a reliable backup solution for Jira that protects your work so mistakes don't turn into disasters. Check them out at GitProtect.io. So these tools growing, getting into enterprise, they're obviously investor backed. They have, they need to make money. Same thing with every other platform and product and business. And I kind of noticed these waves of one company rising up, doing things that piss off their user base, and then slowly they lose market share to like a linear, for example. And then because of that, linear starts to grow, and then their users are super happy, and then we go through this cycle again. Gets super bureaucrative and like investor backed, turns into something that users hate, and then we get the next thing. Do you think that's going to happen with Atlassian?
Hot take, it already has.
Ooh.
It has, and that's not a dig at Atlassian. That is a
Mm-hmm.
recognition that um, the phenomenon you described is, heck, you see this in the music world, for example, where people go, "Oh, they're doing an ad campaign. They've sold out. They're no longer genuine," right? It's always going to be true as a company tries to expand and move up market. They make some decisions that are right for the market they're going
Mm-hmm.
after. And it's really hard to do that and stay cool and
Mm-hmm.
compact and you know, small and agile and versatile for the smaller
Yeah.
teams. So it's ever that way. So yeah, that train is
Interesting.
passed for Atlassian, and I don't think they mind. Clearly they don't mind. I mean, look, he was my biggest sign because I've been around the Atlassian ecosystem starting as an enterprise admin since 2012, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the fourth or fifth time they've said we're going after the enterprise. This is the
Mm-hmm.
first time they're really, 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 really going after the enterprise. And you know what the biggest sign was? It sponsored an F1 team.
Ooh, interesting. Is that
Here's
because every
why.
other brand in that space has F1 teams?
Kinda, kinda, yeah. When you want to be associated with Oracle and Siebel
Mm-hmm.
and Microsoft and Salesforce and all these other enterprise platforms, what's the milieu? Where they're F1. They're sponsoring F1 teams. They're advertising big at the World Cup. You know, all of these sporting events and other events that generally will draw the CIOs, the CTOs, right? The big enterprise decision makers. That's where they're at. So if they want that visibility, then that's where you start marketing. So the F1
Interesting.
team sponsorship was like, There it is. Yep.
Hmm.
Because that's not cheap at all.
Yeah.
And again, not a criticism at all of Atlassian. It's like, that's part of what you do when when you want to be at that top tier of enterprise.
Mm-hmm. For enterprise, yeah. What about the company going downhill, like as a whole, including enterprise, right? Because there's companies that come up, they move faster because they use newer tech, they're more agile, they're more lean, and then they capture that audience that Atlassian sort of left behind. But then they start to capture more of like the enterprise as well. And then like you see this with ServiceNow, you see this with other bigger platforms. They kind of rise to their peak, and then they sort of have their downfall and eventually their decline. Do you think that will ever happen with Atlassian?
Well, it's what we're going to find out, right? Because I mean, yeah, it does happen, but let's look at a contrary example. Look at Microsoft. They dominated the
Mm-hmm.
desktop, and smartly, before the domination of the desktop became so important, and as they started losing it, they dominated an Office with the Office suite,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
um, they used that to pivot to build out their cloud offering, the Azure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic offering there. And now they're using that to start dominating AI compute, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Windows is still great, but it's not the 800-pound gorilla anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Office is still great. I'd choose it over Google Docs any day, frankly. Um, so they're great, but they're not their big, market devouring winner. So Microsoft has successfully pivoted time after time and leveraged their success to go even bigger. So Atlassian can entirely do that. And I'll tell you one example of me having that confidence is they bought the browser company a few months ago, the
Mm-hmm.
AI browser. And I look at that and go, well, of course, because you're wanting to have the entire graph of teamwork. And where does all that happen nowadays? It happens in the browser. So if you've
Mm-hmm.
got an AI agent that can work across the entire graph and it's built into the browser, wow, that's pretty powerful. And I'm a Perplexity Comet user for a few months now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm totally a believer in AI enabled
Yeah.
browsers. So I guess I see that I see them buying DX. They just closed their deal on DX, which is their developer
Mm-hmm.
productivity platform. Yes, that makes a ton of sense. So they
Yeah.
seem to be making smart investments. So I think there's a really good chance for Atlassian. It's just not the Atlassian I grew up with, as it
Mm-hmm.
were, right? It's not the
Yeah.
Atlassian that I hitched my career to that rising star. I literally made a deliberate decision in 2013. I said, "Wow, they are the Salesforce of the software
That's
workflow
an
management world."
early time to hitch on. That was still
Right?
like pre a lot of the modern Jira and Atlassian products.
Yeah, it was just post Greenhopper,
Hmm.
just when it
You
changed to
mentioned
Azure. Yeah,
acquisitions. Do you have
yeah.
any bold predictions with acquisitions that Atlassian might make in the next year?
I am curious to see where Rovo goes. I have
Mm-hmm.
heard different. I've had some conversations with some people, and I hear varying opinions on the effectiveness of Rovo. The idea of Rovo, the idea of having embedded AI in the entire graph, yes, that's absolutely the way to go. Is Rovo
Mm-hmm.
pulling it off? I talk to doubters, I talk to enthusiasts, right? So
Yeah.
if it might be interesting to see if Atlassian does what like Apple threatened to do and never did, which was acquire, um, a frontier model company, and not actually a
Mm-hmm.
frontier model company. Let me back that up. They wouldn't be like Anthropic or something, but the new cool kids, like the newest cool kids, are the specialized coding agent model companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cursor just
Well, they have
rolled out.
RoboDev.
I know they have RoboDev. Let's see how it holds up to Cursor, because Cursor just came out
Mm-hmm.
with their own specialized model just for coding. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like like Claude Code is awesome, but it is a generalized model that is good at coding. But now you're just like past couple weeks seeing these coding, these AI agentic coding platforms coming out with specialized models for coding. So it will be
Mhm.
interesting. That was where I kind of see maybe Atlassian goes there and picks up a highly specialized agentic coding model company to bolster Rovo. Because Rovo, in the end, I mean, it's Rovo. Rovo is like the Glean of Atlassian, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't Glean uses third party models, right? They use
Yeah.
Anthropic or they use OpenAI. So technically, having Rovo adopt a highly specialized agentic coding model for that to really boost up its capabilities in there, I could see that happening. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. So great question, Josh.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I always like think, what is the next thing Atlassian is going to acquire? And it's never what you think. Like, who would have thought Arc browser? I've been using it for like 2 years. That would have been my last pick on their acquisition list, right?
Yeah,
Same thing with Loom. Would have never guessed that one, but I used Loom a ton,
but
and I was super happy about it.
well, you're right. Loom at first, I privately mocked it myself at first, but then I went, wait a minute. They're wanting to own the entire workflow, and
Hmm.
you know, Loom completely fits in the knowledge graph with
Yeah.
Confluence. Just beautifully fits with it. So
Hmm.
yeah, it made a lot of sense. No, there. That's the thing is Atlassian historically has always been a big investor in R&D. Some of the
Hmm.
biggest percentage of investment in the industry, and they've always been smart about that. And so it looks like they've got some really good acquisition team members are really identifying some really good opportunities.
Yeah. I also think it's driven a lot by like utility and use case internally at Atlassian. I remember this interview that someone did with like Tim Cook or someone from the Apple space, one of the higher up execs. And the question that they asked was, how many products do you create or develop that you essentially create for yourself, for your team, for you to use? And the response was like all of them. And it just made sense, right? And I kind of look at Atlassian the same way, where they acquired Loom. They used Loom religiously at Atlassian. They probably a ton of them used Arc browser, and it's like they're looking at these products and they're like they're phenomenal. Like people love these, a community love these products. And when you acquire them, not only does it make sense from like a business perspective, but you make a huge splash in the community that's like a diehard fan of those products, like Loom and Arc browser. So I'm sure a lot of it is like marketing driven as well, but who knows how much of that they take into consideration.
Well, although, boy, I mean, I don't know how much you followed the roasting that Atlassian got for acquiring the browser company. I mean, for a
I'm sure there's
solid two
plenty.
weeks. Oh, there was. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn too much apparently, but there was plenty of roasting, and I didn't. I think that was a lot of short-sighted people.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. It makes just as much sense as the Loom acquisition.
And there's no bad press, right? The fact that there's controversy is like good for Atlassian. There's no lose situation for them here. If people hate on it, people hate on Jira, they don't lose any Jira customers because of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot more people found out about Atlassian than knew about it before.
Well, true. And how many of those people who were roasting Atlassian, they posted their tweet and then switched screens to linear and kept working. They never were an Atlassian person in the first place.
Probably, yeah, very true, very true. Or they had a really bad taste in their mouth from a bad Jira
A
environment or
bad admin,
something.
right? Right.
A bad
Again,
admin, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Well, as we wrap it up, I have a couple of final questions that I'd love to hear from you as someone who's like been in the app world for so long. What do you think is the biggest gap, like actual gap that exists within Jira currently?
Um. So you're. I may not be as good at answering this because I've not admined for a long time. I've been
Hmm.
on the marketplace product side of it. So I'm going to flip
Well,
your
you're
question.
filling utility with marketplace apps, right? So, like, if you were to evaluate today, what would be, let's say, the go-to app that you would create to fill a gap in the Jira
Okay.
marketplace?
So actually, I'm going to pivot that a little bit. And this could be an app, but
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that within a couple years, the Jira UI is going to matter less and less. And it's more going to be the deterministic workflow for development. And you're going to have a company or a user's AI of choice talking to Jira via MCP and using the workflow that's been defined in Jira. And Jira becomes the unified pane of glass for insights into the workflow. And it's really just speaking Jira. Confluence is a different conversation, but it's the one pane of glass for insights into the state of the work the team is doing. But at any given moment, most developers don't want to pivot from their terminal or their code editor over to Jira. So the better that Jira serves a simple, just here's your next thing you got to do. Like in my vision, it's okay. Let's say I'm in Warp and I'm working with Claude Code. I just want Jira to tell me, yep, here is the next highest priority story in the current sprint that you should probably take. And in the terminal, I say, great, assign it to me, move it, and just move it, right? And then you start working it, and it pulls in the contents of the story, pulls in any links, and that informs your interaction with the coding agent to start the work. So I strongly suspect that's where Jira is going to be, as it's all of these complaints about UI changes lately, and that's been plenty of flaming lately about UI changes, right? With Jira, I think they're not going to matter anywhere near as much within the next 2 years.
That's a really interesting concept of having a developer in their code interface and not needing to leave. I wonder if anything like that exists as of today, because it seems fairly straightforward to build.
My wheels are turning on that on too, but I'm like, it's a well implemented MCP server away.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this was a fantastic conversation. I don't think I've ever agreed with any other guests on the podcast. Wish we had more to argue about. But I think it was a great insight from someone who's in the app world, who's been in Jira Atlassian for so long. I think you have this insight into these trends and things that are happening from a different perspective because you've been so involved for so long. Whereas I'm a more of a newbie in the space and kind of see things a little differently than a lot of other people. So definitely interesting to have that perspective. But thank you, Michael, for jumping on. It's been a pleasure. Yeah,
it's great talking with you. And by the way, if I may, as you can tell, I like talking about these things, and I like talking about growth in the AI. So if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, just go to michaelkuhl.com. That redirects to my LinkedIn profile. Love to chat.
Awesome. And I think for everybody listening, make sure you add some Jira hate comments to some of those posts. Totally kidding. Only if you want a conversation around what may be good or bad in Jira.
Happy to have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Josh. Later.